The Forgotten Parents. Welcome back, my friends. It's David Miller here again. I hope you're sitting somewhere quiet, because tonight's story is not about revenge, not about greed, but about something far heavier on the heart. It's about family, about a son who turned his back on the very people who gave him life. It's a story of love broken, of trust shattered, and of regret that came too late. So lean in close, my friends, because this story will remind you of something we all must never forget. Parents are treasures we cannot replace. Now, let me take you to the small town of Willowbrook, where an old couple lived in a modest wooden house, and where their only son made a choice that would haunt him forever. In Willowbrook there stood an old cottage with faded white paint and a crooked fence. It wasn't much, but to Thomas and Margaret Hill it was home. Thomas, a man of 60, still carried the pride of his younger days when he worked as a blacksmith. His hands were calloused, his back bent, but his eyes still burned with strength. Margaret, gentle and kind, spent her days in the garden. She loved her roses, watering them each morning while humming little songs she used to sing to her child. Their son, Ethan Hill, was everything to them. From the moment he took his first steps in that cottage, they had poured their lives into raising him. They gave him the best education they could afford, even when it meant Thomas working late into the night or Margaret selling her hand-stitched quilts for extra money. When Ethan turned 21, Thomas presented him with $500, money saved from years of sweat and sacrifice. "This is for your future, son," Thomas said, pride trembling in his voice. "Use it wisely. Build something of your own." Ethan smiled that day, hugging his father. Thomas believed his boy would rise, would make him proud. But deep inside Ethan's heart a restlessness grew. He wanted more than the quiet life of Willowbrook. He wanted the glitter of the city, the sound of money clinking, the taste of pleasures he had only read about. And so, while Margaret dreamed of her son returning as a successful man, Ethan dreamed of leaving, never to look back. But fate, my friends, has a cruel way of revealing truths. The morning Ethan left Willowbrook was heavy with silence. Margaret woke early, her hands trembling as she packed a small brown suitcase for him. Inside, she placed neatly folded shirts, a pair of polished shoes, and a scarf she had knitted during the winter. "Just something to keep you warm," she whispered, her eyes moist. Thomas stood by the door, his strong hands gripping the wooden frame so tightly the veins stood out. He didn't speak much that morning. He didn't need to. The silence of a father often says more than words ever could. Ethan, with excitement bubbling in his chest, barely noticed. His eyes darted down the path that led out of town. "I'll be back soon," he said quickly, his voice carrying more impatience than love. Margaret stepped forward, hugging him tightly, her tears soaking his shirt. "Remember, Ethan, wherever you go, don't forget where you come from." Thomas finally spoke, his deep voice cracking. "Don't lose yourself out there, son. The world is not as calm as you think." But Ethan's heart was already gone, lost to dreams of city lights and wealth. He kissed his mother's forehead, gave his father a quick pat on the shoulder, and without looking back, he walked down the road. The old cottage, the crooked fence, the roses in the garden, everything faded behind him. That night, Margaret sat by the window, clutching the scarf she had meant to give him in his hands. Thomas smoked his pipe in silence, staring into the dark. And in that silence a seed of sorrow was planted. Ethan, meanwhile, boarded the last bus to the city. His heart raced as the bright neon lights came into view. Bars, gambling halls, the laughter of strangers, the promises of easy money. It was everything he had imagined. He felt alive, he felt free. But freedom, can be the first step toward chains. The city welcomed Ethan with open arms, or at least it seemed that way. Tall buildings scraped the sky, streets buzzed with people, and neon lights flickered promises of wealth and pleasure. Ethan rented a small room above a noisy tavern for $20 a week. The bed creaked, the window rattled, but to him, it felt like freedom. Every morning he told himself he would find work, honest work. Yet every evening he found himself lured by the glow of the casinos and the call of dice hitting the tables. One night he met Vincent Harlow, a sharp-dressed man with a silver tongue. Vincent leaned close to Ethan, sliding a glass of whiskey across the bar. "Luck," he said with a smirk, "belongs to the brave. You've got that look, son. You're hungry." And hungry Ethan was. With trembling hands, he put his first $50 on the table. The dice rolled. Cheers filled the air. Ethan doubled his money. The rush was intoxicating. Days blurred into nights, nights blurred into debt. At first it was $50, then $200, then, before he knew it, Ethan owed Vincent's man nearly $3,000. Instead of sending money home, Ethan began sending excuses. Letters grew shorter, colder. Margaret read them at the kitchen table, her lips pressed tight. "She says he's working hard," she whispered to Thomas. Thomas only grunted, smoke curling from his pipe. Deep down he knew the truth. The world had its claws in their boy. Back in the city, Ethan found himself sinking deeper. He sold the watch his father had given him. He pawned the scarf his mother had knitted. Each choice, small and desperate, carved a wound in his soul. And yet each night as he staggered back to his rented room, he told himself, just one more chance, just one more win. The city was no longer welcoming him. It was consuming him. And Ethan, was too blind to see. Weeks turned into months. Ethan's debts grew heavier, pressing on his chest like a stone he could not shake off. Vincent's men were no longer friendly. Their knocks on his door grew louder, sharper, filled with threats instead of promises. One evening Vincent himself appeared, his polished shoes clicking against the wooden floor. He sat across from Ethan, lit a cigar, and exhaled smoke with a smile that never touched his eyes. 3,000, Ethan, Vincent said quietly. 3,000 you owe me, and patience is a currency I don't deal in. You've got 2 weeks. Ethan's throat tightened. His pockets were empty, his soul even emptier. That night he stared at the ceiling of his room, the shadows whispering, clawing at his mind. He thought of home, of Margaret's warm bread, of Thomas's steady hands, of the small cottage in Willow Creek. And then the thought twisted. His father had money. Not much, but enough. A few hundred saved in the lockbox beneath the floorboard. Money meant for emergencies, for sickness, for survival. The idea festered, burned. Ethan told himself it was just borrowing. He would win big, pay it back and no one would know. So he boarded the bus one cold morning, the ticket costing him his last crumpled dollar bills. By dusk, he stood again before the cottage, his mother's joyful gasp filling the air. "Oh, Ethan!" Margaret cried, tears glistening in her eyes as she wrapped her arms around him. "You've come home!" Thomas rose from his chair, his face softening into the faintest smile. "Welcome back, son." Ah. Guilt stabbed at Ethan's chest, but he pushed it down. That night, while his parents slept soundly, he crept across the creaking floorboards. His hands trembled as he lifted the rug, pried up the wooden plank, and reached for the lockbox. Inside lay $480, every coin and bill his parents had saved. Ethan's breath came heavy as he shoved the money into his coat. When dawn broke, he was gone. His parents woke to an empty house and an emptier lockbox. And for the first time in their lives, Thomas and Margaret felt the sting of betrayal, delivered not by strangers, but by the very son they had raised. Ethan clutched the money in his coat pocket as if it were the beating heart of his salvation. He convinced himself it was only borrowed, that he'd win, repay, and return home as the prodigal son, with pockets full and apologies ready. The city lights welcomed him back, buzzing and cruel, pulling him toward the neon glow of Vincent's den. The dice clattered, the cards flipped, and Ethan's eyes burned with feverish hope. He started small, $50 on the table, lost. Another 50, gone. His hands shook, sweat beading on his brow. Then, desperate to chase what he had already lost, he dropped 100 in one breath. "Oh," the pit boss smirked. "Young blood with courage, or maybe just foolishness." Within an hour, 200 was gone. Within 2 hours, 300. Ethan's chest pounded as if every coin slipping away was a piece of his soul. He gasped, "Bah," but couldn't stop. The room spun with smoke and laughter, every face mocking his desperation. Finally, with trembling fingers, he placed the last 80 on a single hand of cards. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He flipped his cards, a pair of 10s. For a moment his chest filled with hope. Then Vincent leaned back, smiling, and laid down a flush. Silence crashed over Ethan. Every dollar, every cent of his parents' savings was gone. Vincent's men laughed, the sound echoing like knives scraping against glass. "That's it? That's all you've got?" Vincent sneered. He blew smoke into Ethan's face. Pathetic. Ethan stumbled into the night, his pockets empty, his soul hollow. He leaned against a brick wall, sliding down until he sat in the filth of the alley. His hands covered his face as the truth tore at him. He hadn't borrowed. He had stolen. And what was worse, he had wasted it all. The cold night pressed against him, but colder still was the thought of his father's eyes when he'd discover the lockbox empty. Thomas's silence would not just be silence anymore. It would be disappointment, sharp and merciless. And Margaret, sweet Margaret, oh, how would she cry when she realized her son had traded her love for the emptiness of cards and dice. The dawn that followed was not kind. Ethan woke on the cold pavement, his head pounding and his stomach twisting with hunger. The streets were alive with merchants shouting, horses clattering, and people rushing past him as if he were invisible. But he wasn't invisible to everyone. 2 shadows fell across his body. When he lifted his eyes, Vincent's men stood there, Marcus and Leon. Marcus, broad-shouldered, with a scar that cut through his lip. Leon, tall and lean, his eyes cold as winter glass. "On your feet, boy," Marcus growled, kicking at Ethan's leg. Ethan staggered upright, his knees shaking. "Oh, I don't have it yet." "Oh, we know," Leon sneered, gripping Ethan's collar. "But Vincent doesn't wait. He doesn't forgive." They dragged him into the den, threw him against the green felt table where he had lost everything. Vincent sat there, calm, lighting another cigar. The smoke curled upward like a slow, suffocating ghost. 3,000, Ethan, Vincent repeated softly. 3,000, and now interest. Make it 3,500. You've got 1 week. Ethan's heart sank. I can't. I don't. Vincent raised a hand, silencing him. "Then maybe your dear mother and father can help again." His words cut like knives. "No!" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "Leave them out of this." Vincent smirked. "You brought them into it when you stole from them." "Don't look so shocked, boy. Do you think I don't know?" He tapped the table, and Marcus slammed a fist beside Ethan's head, making him flinch. 7 days, Vincent whispered, his voice low and venomous. Thrown back into the street, Ethan stumbled away, his breath ragged. His body trembled, not just from fear, but from shame. He had stolen once. Could he do it again? Could he really look his father in the eye and strip away what little dignity remained in that small cottage? He pressed his head against the wall of a narrow alley, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He told himself there had to be another way, another chance. But deep down he knew the path he had chosen was dragging him closer and closer to destroying everything he loved. And yet, instead of turning back, Ethan kept walking forward into the shadows. The dawn that followed was not kind. Ethan woke on the cold pavement, his head pounding and his stomach twisting with hunger. The streets were alive with merchants shouting, horses clattering, and people rushing past him as if he were invisible. But he wasn't invisible to everyone. 2 shadows fell across his body. When he lifted his eyes, Vincent's men stood there, Marcus and Leon. Marcus, broad-shouldered, with a scar that cut through his lip. Leon, tall and lean, his eyes cold as winter glass. "On your feet, boy," Marcus growled, kicking at Ethan's leg. Ethan staggered upright, his knees shaking. I don't have it yet." "Oh, we know," Leon sneered, gripping Ethan's collar. "But Vincent doesn't wait. He doesn't forgive." They dragged him into the den, threw him against the green felt table where he had lost everything. Vincent sat there, calm, lighting another cigar. The smoke curled upward like a slow, suffocating ghost. 3,000, Ethan, Vincent repeated softly. 3,000, and now interest. Make it 3,500. You've got 1 week. Ethan's heart sank. I can't. I don't. Vincent raised a hand, silencing him. "Then maybe your dear mother and father can help again." His words cut like knives. "No," Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "Leave them out of this." Vincent smirked. "You brought them into it when you stole from them." "Don't look so shocked, boy. Do you think I don't know?" He tapped the table, and Marcus slammed a fist beside Ethan's head, making him flinch. 7 days, Vincent whispered, his voice low and venomous, "or you'll pay in ways you can't imagine." Thrown back into the street, Ethan stumbled away, his breath ragged. His body trembled, not just from fear, but from shame. He had stolen once. Could he do it again? Could he really look his father in the eye and strip away what little dignity remained in that small cottage? He pressed his head against the wall of a narrow alley. Ah, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He told himself there had to be another way, another chance. But deep down, he knew. The path he had chosen was dragging him closer and closer to destroying everything he loved. And yet, instead of turning back, Ethan kept walking forward into the shadows. Weeks passed after the letter arrived, yet Daniel did not come. Elena, however, clung to hope, waking every morning with the thought that today might be the day her son would return. She prepared his favorite dishes, left the gate unlatched, and kept the hallway lamp burning late into the night, as if guiding him back home. Victor, on the other hand, remained firm in his silence. Though they never spoke of the letter again, Elena noticed how often he opened the drawer just to look at it. His sternness was a mask, hiding the wound that cut deeper than he dared admit. A chilly afternoon, the sound of hesitant footsteps echoed in the courtyard. Elena, tending to the small garden she refused to let die, froze. Slowly, she lifted her gaze, and her heart nearly stopped. There, standing awkwardly by the gate, was Daniel. His once proud shoulders were hunched, his clothes worn and travel-stained. His eyes, those same eyes she had looked into since he was a child, were now filled with guilt and exhaustion. Daniel, his voice cracked as he spoke. Elena dropped the watering can, rushing forward with tears streaming down her face. She threw her arms around him, clinging as though he might vanish again. "My son, you came back," she whispered, her sobs muffled against his chest. From the doorway, Victor appeared, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing, only watching the fragile scene before him. Daniel stepped back slightly, facing his father. His lips trembled. "Father, I have no excuses. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I beg you, let me try to make things right." The silence stretched heavy between them. Victor's jaw tightened, his pride warring with the longing in his heart. Finally, he spoke in a low, strained voice. "You broke us, Daniel. But if you truly mean to return, then prove it, not with words, but with your actions." Daniel bowed his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I will. I swear it." Elena clung to both of them, her heart finally daring to believe that broken ties might yet be mended. But deep inside, Victor wondered if wounds like these could ever truly heal. The following days were filled with an uneasy silence. Daniel stayed in his childhood room, now dusty from years of disuse. He cleaned it himself, perhaps as a small gesture of humility, though the weight of his mistakes lingered in every corner of the house. Elena, overjoyed at his return, prepared meals with a happiness she hadn't felt in years. She often sat with Daniel, asking about his struggles, his travels, his regrets. He answered honestly, his voice heavy with shame. I thought money and freedom would make me happy, Mother, but all I found was emptiness." Victor, however, remained distant. Though he did not reject Daniel's presence, he did not embrace it either. At the dinner table, his words were few, his eyes sharp, always watching. For him, trust was not a gift to be given lightly. It had to be earned. One evening, after supper, Daniel quietly approached his father. His hands shook slightly as he held out a small, worn pouch. Inside were a few coins, hardly worth much. "It's all I have left," Daniel admitted. "I know it doesn't compare to what I took from you, Father, but I want to give it back. It's a start." Victor stared at the pouch for a long time, his expression unreadable. At last he pushed it back toward Daniel. "Keep it," he said firmly. "What you owe is not measured in coins. It's measured in the pain you caused and the trust you shattered. If you want redemption, then stay. Work beside me. Show me with your hands, not your money." Daniel's throat tightened. He nodded, his voice trembling. "I will, Father. I'll prove myself." That night, Elena wept silently in her room, not from sorrow, but from relief. For the first time, she sensed a fragile bridge forming between father and son, though it was built on fragile ground. But in Victor's heart, doubts still lingered. Could Daniel truly change, or would this newfound humility fade away, leaving them broken all over again? The morning sun stretched across the Greenwood farm as Daniel rose earlier than he had in years. His father was already outside, tending to the soil, his strong hands guiding the plow with precision. Daniel hesitated at the doorway, watching him for a moment. He remembered being a boy, running barefoot across that very field, laughing while Victor worked. Now, shame weighed on him heavier than the plow itself. "Don't just stand there," Victor said without looking up. His tone was firm, but not harsh. "If you want to prove yourself, take the harness. Let's see what you can do." Daniel stepped forward, gripping the wooden handle. The earth resisted. His muscles trembled, and sweat quickly dampened his shirt. He groaned softly, struggling to push. Years of chasing easy pleasures had left him weak. But he kept going, his breath ragged, refusing to quit under his father's watchful eye. Hours passed. The sun grew merciless, the soil heavier. Victor finally called a halt, nodding slightly. "Not bad for your first day. You've got a long road ahead." Daniel collapsed onto the grass, panting. For the first time in years, though, he felt something different, a sense of purpose. "Thank you, Father," he whispered, barely able to speak. That evening, Elena watched from the kitchen window as Victor and Daniel shared a quiet meal together outside. They didn't say much, but there was no anger, no shouting, only silence filled with a fragile peace. As night fell, Daniel sat alone on the porch, looking up at the stars. His chest rose and fell with slow, tired breaths. "I'll make this right," he murmured to himself. But in the darkness, a question lingered in his heart. Was redemption ever truly possible, or was it just another dream he was chasing? And now, my friends, let me pause here for a moment. Tell me, what do you think so far? Do you believe Daniel deserves forgiveness after all the pain he caused? Or is Victor right to keep his guard up? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your voice in this story too. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, ever so slowly, the farm began to feel alive again. Daniel worked beside his father from sunrise to sundown. His groans echoed as he lifted sacks of grain, his arms burning with every load. He wasn't used to this life. but each drop of sweat felt like a prayer for forgiveness. Victor, though stern, no longer barked at him as he once did. Instead, there was quiet instruction. Hold the plow straighter. Don't rush the soil. Respect the land, and it will respect you, he would say, his voice steady, seasoned with years of wisdom. Daniel listened like a child hungry to learn. One evening, as the sky bled into shades of orange, Daniel sat with Elena on the porch. She held his hand gently, her eyes full of unspoken hope. "Your father doesn't say it, Daniel, but he sees the change in you." Daniel's throat tightened. "I don't deserve his forgiveness, Mother. Not after all I've done." Elena squeezed his hand tighter. Forgiveness isn't about what you deserve. It's about love, and love is stronger than mistakes." Inside the farmhouse, Victor overheard their conversation. His chest rose and fell heavily. He remembered the nights Elena cried alone, the endless debt collectors knocking, the shame of neighbors whispering about his son. Yet he also remembered holding Daniel as a baby, his tiny hand gripping Victor's finger with pure trust. That night, Victor stood at Daniel's bedroom door. For a moment, he just watched his son sleeping, his face tired yet peaceful. He whispered under his breath, maybe you can change. Maybe I was wrong to think otherwise." But even with that fragile bond forming, doubts still lingered like shadows. Trust once broken is never rebuilt in a single season. It takes time, patience, and a heart willing to bleed again. Daniel was ready to fight for it, but the question remained: was his father truly ready to let the past go? The seasons shifted. The farm's fields, once bare, now shimmered with green, rows of wheat swaying in the summer wind. Daniel worked tirelessly, his back bent under the sun, his hands blistered but determined. He would sigh at dusk, collapsing onto the porch steps, sweat dripping, yet his heart beating with quiet pride. Victor watched him from the doorway, arms crossed. For months he had waited to see if Daniel's change was real or just another mask. And now, those scars remained. He couldn't deny the truth. His son had begun to honor the soil, honor the home, and slowly honor his parents once more. One evening, as the crickets sang and the air was cool, Victor finally spoke the words Daniel had longed to hear. "You've disappointed me in ways that cut deeper than I ever imagined," Victor said, his voice low but steady. Daniel bowed his head, shame heavy on his shoulders. But then Victor added, "And yet, I see the man you are trying to become. And I will not shut my heart forever. You are my son, and for that, I forgive you." Daniel's eyes burned, his throat catching. "Father, I don't deserve this." Victor placed a rough, calloused hand on his son's shoulder. "Forgiveness isn't about what you deserve, boy. It's about what I choose to give. And I choose to give it because blood runs deeper than mistakes." Elena, standing nearby, wept softly. For the first time in years, their family shared a fragile peace, one built not on perfection, but on the hard, painful road of redemption. And now, my dear listeners, lean in close, because here's the truth that must not be forgotten. Parents, they give everything, often with nothing left for themselves. They sacrifice dreams, sweat, and years so their children can stand tall. To betray them, it is to betray the very roots that give us life. So if you still have your parents, treasure them. Speak gently, walk carefully. For one day, when their chairs sit empty and their voices are only memories, you will wish with all your heart that you had done better.